Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Diwali cheer has arrived early for the great Indian middle class, with the GST Council collapsing four tax slabs into just two, that is 5% and 18%, from food and daily essentials to big ticket buys like cars, televisions, refrigerators, and air conditioners. Households will now have more money left in hand as prices ease. Now, this was cleared, this GST rationalization, if I may call it, or the new GST reforms, which Nirmala Sitharaman is calling about. It was cleared at the September 3rd meeting in New Delhi. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman led GST Council's decision marks the most sweeping reset of indirect taxes since GST was introduced in 2017. And it promises to lighten up the family budgets and lift consumer sentiment ahead of the festive season. But the big question which everyone is asking, that isn't this what the government should have done from the very beginning? And that's where the politics comes. And when I talk about politics, I want to play out the tweet which has been written by former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram. Now, look at this very clearly, and then we will go ahead with all the questions related with this GST reform which the government is talking about. Now, what Chidambaram has written: GST rationalization and the reduction in rates on a range of goods and services are welcome, but 8 years too late. He specifies on this 8 year period why it is coming too late. The current design of GST and the rates prevailing until today ought not to have been introduced in the first place. We have been crying hoarse for the last 8 years against the design and the rates of GST, but our pleas fell on deaf ears. And then he has raised a few questions which are very, very significant. He says it will be interesting to speculate on what drove the government to make the changes. Number one, sluggish growth. Number two, rising household debt. Number three, falling household savings. Number four, elections in Bihar. Number five, Mr. Trump and his tariffs. And six, all of the above. So we'll try and discuss that what has actually driven the government to rationalize the GST. And anyways, Rahul Gandhi, if you look at the Congress is posting Rahul Gandhi's old tweets where he spoke about GST as the Gabbar Singh tax because it had impacted the households in a big way. And if the government is trying to rewind the whole thing, has the government realized that it was a mistake what it did? It is some kind of an admission of the guilt that the government has realized that probably it's not working and this is the last or the least they can do. Joining me this evening is renowned economist, Professor Santosh Mehrotra. So thank you so much for joining. We have Girish Joshi, senior journalist and political commentator. Thank you so much, Girish, sir, for joining. And we have Siddharth Sharma, independent media analyst. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for joining. And I'll begin with what Professor Santosh Mehrotra will have to say. Professor Mehrotra, is this some kind of an achievement which Nirmala Sitharaman is bragging about? The entire BJP is gung-ho about the fact that, look, we brought in the next GST reforms. How would you look at it? And I'm purely talking about this on the basis of merits and as well as the politics which is playing out. I remember having done an interview with you years back when GST came in, and you said that this will not go in the long run. I still remember that interview which I did on some other platform, and you said this long back. Now what do you have to say?
Well, what I have to say, what I've been saying for several years, Neelu ji, कि देर आए दुरुस्त आए, मगर अब बहुत देर आए. मतलब this is just unbelievable. The illiteracy of the policymakers. I don't know where these policymakers are. Whatever it is, the fact of the matter is, I think Mr. Chidambaram's analysis or questions that he put there are absolutely all spot on. All of the reasons, all of the same reasons. It's a combination of sluggish growth.
It's all of the above. You are saying it's all of the above.
Well, absolutely. It's all of the above. No question about it. It is definitely all of the above. And I've been writing about each one of these factors, which of course the government completely denies. They just fly in the face of facts. They will do anything to fly in the face of facts. Anyway, so of course it's good news. I don't know how much of an impact it will have. They are hoping for I've seen all the commentary from the Mumbai business houses and the Mumbai analysts, and I'm actually quite surprised because they genuinely think that suddenly there's going to be a huge increase in consumption demand. What they don't understand is that inflation, although it has come down, it has hit people so hard that real wages have not increased for 11 years. Now, all these analysts also don't understand that apart from the fact that real wages have not been rising, the bottom line is that jobs have not been growing in the non-farm sector. There are still 80 million more workers in agriculture, Neeluji, than there were in 2019. In other words, in the last 5 years, their policies have resulted in an increase and a reverse migration back into agriculture. They, exult over the fact that women's labor force participation has increased. Neeluji, the rise in the female labor force participation is driven largely because the women have returned to agriculture. Women had come out of agriculture. They went back into agriculture as unpaid family labor. Unpaid family labor, and then all these people who went back to rural areas, they are doing own account work, कुछ छोटी दुकान खोल ली, कुछ कर रहे हैं और अपनी नाक बचाने के लिए when the enumerator comes कि क्या करते हो, they say we are in agriculture, क्योंकि एग्रीकल्चर में वैसे ही surplus labor है. So this is the tragedy. The number of young people who are getting better educated, the women of the young girls who are getting better educated, they want to not marry. The girls don't want to marry. They want to get jobs in the city, but the jobs are not getting created. And if anything, private investors, high net worth individuals are flying out of the country. In 2024, 3,500 high net worth individuals took their money out. From 2014 to 2024, 23,000 multimillionaires, billionaires की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, millionaires की बात कर रहा हूं, dollar millionaires की बात कर रहा हूं. They have left the country. So private investment is not coming in. They're taking out and investing abroad. Why? Because consumption is not increasing. Consumption is being maintained by ordinary people by borrowing against gold loans or by middle class people against banks. So you have a situation where this government, despite oil prices remaining in the region of $60 to $70 a barrel, compared to when we were in power, the international oil prices used to be in the region of 100 to 140. And yet we kept the prices at 70 rupees. The price today, for years now has been at 100 rupees. It's feeding into the inflation rate. So, if wages are not increasing and if inflation has consistently been high, especially food inflation, तो समझ आता नहीं है तो कभी अनियंस का बैन कर देते हैं कभी.
What I'm sure, these are the facts what you are talking about, but GST 2.0, what is it? Is it an admission of the government's mistakes? Look, our GST 1.0 did not work and therefore we have to bring in 2.0.
You see, not work का आपको एविडेंस दे देता हूं मैं. नीलू जी, आपका डेटा सरकारी देता. In 2017, the contribution of those 17 taxes, which were then subsumed, state and central taxes, which were subsumed into the GST, goods and for services, at the central level as well as the states, 17 taxes were subsumed. Now, whatever the contribution of those 17 taxes as a proportion of GDP at that time was, I'm talking about 17 before the launch of GST, that contribution as a proportion of GDP actually fell. And it rose back only in 2024 to the level that prevailed in 2013 as a proportion of GDP. What the government keeps trumpeting to you day in and day out, oh, look at the size of, GST takings, meaning 1.4 lakh crores tha, is बार 1.5 lakh crores. इस
would
महीने
you call
1.6
it, but Professor Mehrotra, you would also call it some kind of a policy failure, an abysmal policy failure, because the
Of
consumption
course,
was not happening. They went on giving direct benefit transfers, and all that has resulted into a collapsed economy.
totally agree with you. Well, I wouldn't say collapsed economy, certainly slowed economy compared to the growth rate earlier. Certainly a systematically slower job growth, certainly lower wage growth, certainly also poverty has fallen, but poverty has not fallen by as much as when we were in power. So for all these reasons, it's a catastrophe. I mean, 8 lost years on respects of GST because it was feeding into inflation. It is really tragic. They don't even
All
make the
right.
data public.
Right.
So it's really seriously tragic. Seriously
Okay.
tragic.
You are saying it's a catastrophe. 8 years is too long with the GST regime we had. I'll come to Girishji now. Girish, Rahul Gandhi, of course, has been speaking for quite some time that this 18% GST slab should be removed. Government is now taking credit for GST 2.0 as if, it's some kind of a reform. Do you see this as a reform? Can the government really take credit for this kind of a GST rationalization? Because they are calling it a big achievement. They are calling it a Diwali bonanza for the middle class. Of course, now the middle class will stand to benefit. But can they really call it some kind? Can they claim credit for this? Is it not because of the pressure of the opposition, which consistently Congress has been raising, and also people like Santosh Mehrotra, on and off, they've been speaking about it? You'll have to unmute. Girish, you'll have to unmute. Yeah.
There is some different angle to this story also. I was astonished to see that opposition, after agreeing to all this, nobody came and said that this is wrong. Actually, we like to congratulate the opposition because they have silently agreed, and the game behind that is this is not domestic. BR elections brought your 5% to 0%. But what was that 40% game? If you see the items listed into 40%, who is that going to hit, and where is the hidden message therefore? All the soft drinks are into 40%, tobaccos into 40%, the high level costly cars are into 40%. Now if you see, I'll just give you a justification for what has happened to cold drinks. The cold drink market in India is 60% controlled by Coca-Cola and 30% by Pepsi. There are no Indian players. If you know, they were here since 1949. When Morarji Desai came and Farah came into power, Coca-Cola had to leave. After liberalization 91, they immediately enter because this is a 25 billion market only for soft drinks. Now, when they enter, in that gap, there was a small company which was, I think, pure drinking group. They formed a company called Campa Cola. They wanted to fill in that gap, but that miserably fired. And when 91 Coca-Cola came back, suddenly in 22 a big player comes into the market, and by 22 crores, Mukesh Ambani buys that company. Now Mukesh Ambani, after like this, he did not do much into Indian market. He shifted to all those countries which were anti-Americans. He's doing a big marketing into Oman, Gulf, most of the Gulf countries, Bahrain. So he has captured that market in the name of Campa Cola. And now here, the hit is that 40% Coca-Cola and Pepsi, which are American-owned companies, and they are holding 90% of the market, are going to take that hit. So is this a message, before you hosting the BRICS meeting next year in the beginning, is this a message to the American companies that if you bully us with the tax, even we can? Now, that is not only the market. There are 10 American companies who are still holding 60% of your fast food chains also. McDonald's, Starbucks, Domino's, Pizza Hut, KFC. These are all players who are doing almost $250 billion market business in India. Now, these are the people who are going to keep their profits here under that 40%. So is this a pressure? And I would like to, that's why I said that credit, you see, only Rahul Gandhi is speaking and Chidambaram has given remark. Nobody, the credit goes to the opposition for really playing them a very good boys. That is the national spirit. Because they have been made to understand that 40% is to answer the tariffs that are unofficially leveled on India. So this can be a part of the game because other things are disturbed, but bringing essential services and FMCG below 5% and 0%, that is a step. But looking at the political angle, this government does not do unless it is compelled to do something or it has
Right.
got a pressure of winning some elections. So there are
Right.
two angles to this. This is
But,
also to convince and affect the BR election and teaching a lesson to the Trump tariff.
to Trump tariffs. Okay, okay. So more or less, whatever Chidambaram has written, that these are the factors which could have driven, and he's raised a question. What,
Yes.
according to you, would be the reason, Siddharth, why the government was driven to rationalize the GST? And is it a really? Would you really also see this as some kind of a big achievement and call it a Diwali bonanza?
Well, Niluji, it's very simple. If I reform something, I redo something, that essentially is an admission that whatever I did earlier, my earlier version was wrong. My earlier version was faulty. That is why I am redoing my version, isn't it? So basically, if today they are saying that they are reforming GST, that means it's a mea culpa from the Modi government that the earlier GST did not work. It was not a master stroke, rather it was a master blunder. Now, as Mehrotra ji very clearly said, what I understood is that, very simplifying it, a tonic is given to a healthy person to retain his health. But tonic doesn't work on a hospital patient whose health has already deteriorated. For a person who is in a hospital, tonics don't work. You have to give them medicine. Now, as Mehrotra ji said, it looks like oont ke muh mein jeera, too little, too late. Because Indian savings, that is savings of an Indian household, which was 24% in 2005, has fallen to less than 18% in 2024. That essentially means people have no money to spend. Their savings itself have fallen down. So essentially, if you ask a pauper who has absolutely no money in his pocket, whether a coffee costs rupees 200 or 20, he cannot afford either of those coffees. He cannot afford 200 rupee coffee, he cannot afford either a 20 rupee coffee. So uh, per family in India, per family borrowings, that is a loan, a borrowing, the weight of borrowing on a family per family in India in 2019 was nearly 1,80,000 rupees per family. Today, just 6 years later, it is nearly 4 lakhs. So people are burdened by borrowings. People are burdened by less savings. So a person who is burdened by less savings, less income, how does it matter whether you make it 15% or 40% or 5%? Because most of his earnings is less, and most of his money is going to pay interest in borrowing. So I think what happens is that एक गोस्वामी तुलसीदास जी थे आज से 500 साल पहले, उन्होंने एक बहुत अच्छा बताया था कि मुखिया मुखसो चाहिए, खान पान को एक, पाले पोसे सकल अंग तुलसी सहित विवेक. So essentially, what we have to understand is that itself is exactly reflected in India's Article 1 of the Constitution, that India is a union of states. So essentially, the parts called the states, if they are healthy, they make a family called India. Now, in this same 21st and 22nd August GST meeting, Maharashtra said that it has become poorer by 32,000 crores. 32,000 crores, the government of India has to compensate Maharashtra. Karnataka says it has lost 33,000 crores. Gujarat, their own BJP ruled state, says that it has lost 25,000 crores. Tamil Nadu says that it has lost 24,000 crores. Punjab yesterday is claiming that because of the floods, there are 50,000 crores compensation. So essentially what seems to be happening is that the states are getting poorer, and this GST money, which essentially the government of India seems to have muffled the GST profit to itself, onto itself. It's like घर का मुखिया जो है वो तो बहुत अमीर हो गया है और बाकी जितने भी भाई हैं वो सब पापड़ होते चले जा रहे हैं. So I don't think this model works. I don't think this model works. And essentially, and the other part that Joshi ji said, this might well be a political gimmick. On one hand, to give a message to people in Bihar or the places where elections are going on, that see, the government is doing something to reduce prices. At the same time, giving a message to America that see, your companies, your what do you say, foreign companies, your American companies like Pepsi, Coke, or McDonald's will have to pay more to us. It can be a kind of a counter tariff also. But that said, that might be the political messaging. The essential part is that just like Mehrotra ji said, ये ऊँट के मुंह में जीरा है, too little too late है. जो आदमी पेशेंट है उसको आप टॉनिक देने की बात कर रहे हो, उसको दवा चाहिए, आप टॉनिक दोगे तो कैसे ठीक होगा?
Okay, so I'll come to Professor Mehrotra. Now, what is the government looking at achieving in terms of revenue? Can they ramp up additional revenue? What about the losses? What about the deficit? How will they treat that according to you? You'll have to unmute Professor Mehrotra. Yes.
Now, my understanding is that in the short run, it's going to cause a loss. That's pretty clear. So analysts have put out some estimates. Other than that, the government itself, the Secretary Finance yesterday in the PC said that if you use 23-24 data, then the immediate loss is going to be 48,000 crore in a year. Now, the first thing that has to be recognized is that, of course, since half the year is past, we are talking about in this year about 22,000 crores. Now, what they are hoping is, my understanding is, what they are hoping is that as a result of this, there will be an increase in demand. Now, my suspicion is that as with the personal income tax cut that happened on August, February 1 this year, as with that, it has not begun to show itself in increased consumption very much, which is exactly what I was predicting then. I said that to them on Times Now Live because I was there all day on their show. And now with this, you see, people have been literally in the bottom 60% of the population. They are the ones who are likely to be a benefit from this. Trouble is, Niruji, I think, and your readers your viewers need to appreciate this, that a very significant share of both middle class people who have organized sector jobs, regular jobs, and those in rural areas who have the capacity to borrow because they have gold, and even the relatively not so well off in urban areas, they have taken gold loans. So the well off in urban areas, I mean the middle class, have taken personal loans, and so what we are seeing is that bank personal loans, retail loans have gone up. So industry is not borrowing, because industry doesn't have confidence that if they were to invest by borrowing and invest in new plant or factories, that they will be able to sell the new products. So jobs are not getting created. So what have the banks done in order to increase their profits? They've actually started to lend. Now, on the other hand, the rest of the population who don't have the confidence to borrow from the banks, they've taken gold loans. So the gold loans, now what has happened as a result of Trump tariffs and other reasons, the central banks of many countries of the world have been buying up gold globally. So China's central bank has been buying up gold, so has Japan, and of course so has India. Result?
Right.
Gold prices have been rising systematically across the globe. Result on our borrowers in rural areas, not so well off in urban areas, who took gold loans, gold prices have risen. So because gold prices have risen, they are benefiting from that. They are not having to repay those loans. They're saying we are just going to default on our higher price gold and just give up our gold. So they have lost that asset which they had. They will lose that asset because they need to maintain consumption. Or maybe there's a death in the family. There's a wedding in the family. So for all types of reasons, people need to borrow. So in this situation, if prices are going to drop on account of the cuts in GST, I've given you this background only because if jobs are not growing and if GST reduces prices, will they necessarily buy more products? Unlikely. So we are not going to see the bump up in demand, and hence I'm not expecting an increase in investment as a result of that, because what we've noticed over the last 7 years, 8 years, since the policy induced shock of Note Bandi followed by the badly designed GST, is that the growth rate in the last 11 years has been systematically lower than it used to be from 2004 to 14. From 2004 to 14, it was 7.8%. In the last 11 years, it's averaged 5.8%, but a full 2 percentage points lower, which is the reason jobs are not growing. So you have a situation where you are not going to see the bounce back, bounce up in the demand that they are expecting. Under the circumstances, I'm thinking that people will just absorb these lower prices, because after all, petrol prices are still very high, and EV penetration is barely 4 or 5%. No, sorry, 7% total now after a recent increase. Not too many people are buying EV scooters either. I'm really quite surprised at how low the penetration remains, despite the fact that the taxes on EVs are low. So what are you saying? That yes, maybe some demand increase, demand may increase for two-wheelers, some demand may increase for cars, for those who have capacity to pay. For the vast majority, there's no capacity to pay, Baba.
Yeah. That's true. That's right. But the fact that Bihar is going to polls, and we've already said that this is also one of the factors which drove the government to rationalize the GST. I'll come for the concluding comments to Giriji and Siddharth. Girish, now when the the people of Bihar, when they look at the vote chori campaign, which is foisted by the opposition, and then here now, I'm sure the BJP will talk about the GST reforms in a big way, and ultimately how will it pan out for the people? Because ultimately the common man will see how much of the money is left at the end of the day in his pocket. Would the Janta be happy, and can they really neutralize this vote chori campaign with this kind of a big achievement which they will give the people just before Diwali?
Nilu, Professor Santosh very well said that, okay, where are the people don't have the buying powers? That is the first thing. Secondly, the people of Bihar are very enlightened. They are not like other people that they discuss every political angle. They realize. So giving all these drumsticks for playing, that is not going to play well in Bihar. And once they have done the cheating, and they are very clear, because they talk to each other. They are otherwise very accumulated there. So this message is not going to well. Abhi vote chor, that title has gone very far and very strong. So now giving a GST advantage, they know the economics. They have seen how much have they been paid during COVID when they migrated. What is happening in Manrega? Manrega, many state stories are coming out that the operators have taken away the money and nobody has been paid. So they have failed in all those aspects. This is not going to play very well what is happening in GST matters. But if you see otherwise, whom have they really obliged? The biggest heat takers in this tariff war are the garments, the shoes and pharmaceuticals. So they have put them to 5% now. So whatever they are not able to export, this will be a little breathing space for them to give it into the domestic market, anticipating that the demand will go after reducing. Now that is the topic. Really you will have to wait and see. Unless you put in the money in the people's pocket, you are not going, consumer market is not going to go up. So now let us think whether really they have a second step to do that or no. That is, we'll have to wait and watch.
I'll come to Siddharth now for the concluding comments. Siddharth, what would you really say? What does the picture look like? That just this GST reforms, is it some kind of a delayed fix? The government is trying to fix a problem which has been super delayed 8 years, and now they realize they don't have any options but to resort to this and call it and lace it up as a GST reform and GST 2.0.
Well, I think you cannot you cannot treat a big wound with a band-aid. I think it is a band-aid on a very big wound, doesn't work. And as Mehrotra ji said, if the companies that are big corporates or industries are not borrowing money because they do not have confidence to start up new ventures, and a very small person, a very poorer kind of a person who is not that well to do in a village setting, in a rural setting, is also pledging his gold for loans, that means across the board from top to bottom in India, people are not feeling that their income is increasing. Now, By reducing GST, you might be reducing the cost, but you're not yet increasing the earnings. Now, the problem here is that people of India want to earn more. A poor person also wants to earn more. A company also wants to earn more. This GST regime is not directed towards increase in earnings. It is directed towards decrease in costs. Now, decrease in costs doesn't matter because there is no increase in earnings. So I think what will happen is that this will become like oot ke muh mein jeera. And another very interesting aspect, like Joshi ji said, if indeed this 40% super sin tax that they are saying is applied on things like Pepsi, Coke, and McDonald's, please understand that customer base, those upper class people, are BJP's core voters. How would they react? Because earnings are not increasing even for them. Just like Mr. Mehrotra ji said, income is not increasing either for a company or for a poor guy. So that means that even upper middle class also is not enjoying more income. But while they are not enjoying more income, if you are putting super rich sin taxes on especially the things that they use, like McDonald's or Pepsi, how would they react? I think BJP's core voter base should be pretty worried right now. BJP should be very worried that its core voter base can get pretty badly shaken up by this new
Right.
misadventure of theirs.
All right. So we'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Professor Mehrotra, Girishji, Siddharth. Thank you very much for joining.